in here. Hi, how are you all? It's really great to be here again on the final Q&A of our Holistic Dog Care Summit. It's been quite a journey. I'm really super happy that you all are here, and the response I'm getting from a variety of different sources through my personal email, through Facebook. I'm seeing some very nice responses, and it's not to pat myself on the back, that's not, but this is, you're responding to it. So this must be something that is helpful to you. That was my intention, was to give something that was helpful to you. So let's just do a quick little recap. As you all are coming in, tell me again where you're from, because I like to see who's here from whatever part of the universe. So just to recap again today. Oh, thank you, Mary. So today's the final day. It's called The Fundamentals of Holistic Care. I spoke with my dear friend, Dr. Tara Timpson, who's a veterinarian at the Best Friends Animal Sanctuary in Utah. And we discussed, I really, really wanted her to talk about the problems with early spay neutering, but also the options for it, options for any kind of spay neuter. And I think we did a pretty good job of covering that. It's something that's a big topic for me because I've watched now for many years animals coming out of situations where they're just spayed way too early. And so I'm sure you saw my passion about that with Dr. Timpson. And then my dear friend, Dr. Todd Cooney, we're able to talk about homeopathic nosodes. And this is one of the places where I feel we have great support if you are not wanting to vaccinate your animal. I'm not speaking about rabies because that's required by law, even though the laws do not reflect the current science, the current immunology, which we should get those changed, but it is still the law. And so I'm not speaking directly about that. I'm talking about distemper, parvo, panleukopenia, every other kind of thing, Lyme, kennel cough, whatever you want. And so Dr. Cooney has a great story, his own personal journey on this path. And I spoke at great length about that. So if you have not had a chance to listen to any of these speakers from today, you still can. We still have time. There's also time to upgrade if you want to upgrade and purchase the whole summit. There's also some bonuses in there. And so I would suggest that you purchase, and then you can watch it in your own leisure. And one of the great things you can do is purchase it for someone you think might need this kind of support. And then they can watch at their own leisure. So again, then I spoke with Dr. Jean Hovey, who I've known for many, many years. We went to the same vet school, although she was a few years behind me. And she's, of course, one of the most experienced veterinarians in the animal feed, in the animal feed world. She's on the board of AFCO, and she knows all the ins and outs and all the messes around processed foods. So that was a very enlightening conversation. And then this is a new friend of mine, but somebody I am just delighted to know, Dr. Stephanie Seneff, one of the world's authorities on glyphosate. And if you watched her presentation, you understand why I wanted her here. Excuse me, my cold is still here. We need her information to really drill down to us what this horrible Monsanto produced product has created, not just in humans, but in our animals. And she was gracious enough to come on this summit and help us understand what we're dealing with. And we mostly touched the surface. The biochemistry is complicated, and I think we were able to distill it down enough. If not, you might have to listen to it a few times, but this is critical information. This toxicant is so omnipresent. It is so dangerous to so many biological systems in the insects, in our soils, in our own bodies. So that's an important one to listen to. And then my dear friend, Dr. Peter Tobias, that was a lovely journey with him, just wandering down the path of universal healing and antioxidants and slow aging and just the emotional side of health and of illness. So I hope you, if you haven't listened to all of these, I hope you go back and take the time to listen to them. And of course, if you buy it forever, then you can do it at your own leisure. And let's see, I want to see where you're all coming from. So um, thank you, Carol. We do hope that there was a lot of heart put into this. And Ontario and Maine again. Hi, Bill. Staten Island, another Ontario. Phoenicia, New York. Oh, Carol, nice to have you here. I'm so glad. Thank you, Jen, that this summit has been phenomenal for you. Thank you so much. I'm really glad to hear these things. Central Coast, California, but from New York. I love it. In Southern Cali. Love it. Western New York. This does my heart good. And here's someone from sunny Phoenix, and we're in cold, dreary New Mexico. And Bristol, Virginia. Hi. We've got a lot of people here today. This is wonderful. Yeah, good. And there's Brenda. Hi, Brenda. Nice to have you here, dear. And Bowie, Maryland, North Carolina. Okay, so we've got quite a range of possibilities here. Okay, so what I thought I would do a little bit today, I hope you all were able to come yesterday. It was an experiment, a thought experiment. I hope you were able to sort of get the gist of what we were trying to do yesterday. It was my intention to help take this even deeper. And I know you can. I do not want to dumb you down. I do not want to dumb this whole huge topic down. I do not want you all to leave here thinking I'm overwhelmed, but I'm confused. Not at all. Not at all. Someone made a comment that sent me a long email, bless her heart, that this summit has kind of a worry-free outlook. I'd say I'm probably a huge worrier, and I worry about your animals, and that's why I wanted to do this summit. So that's not exactly what I was hoping. My worry-free, if you could say anything, is because if you got that impression, maybe it's more because I am less worried if you don't have toxic drugs in your system, if you don't have toxic vaccines. Did I say that right? I'm more worried if you do. So my concerns are not at all that if your animal does not have a yearly parvo vaccine or every 3-year vaccine, my concerns are not about that at all, because I know what those vaccines do and I know their duration of immunity, blah, 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 blah. My concern is when too many things are put into the body, that the body can't manage all of that. And how could we? We have not evolved to handle all of these chemicals in our systems. So that's my big concern. And that was part of what I was trying to do here in this summit. I'm trying to reset my intention so you can walk away and understand that this is a time we have an opportunity now to make some major shifts. And hopefully these really top shelf veterinarians have been able to kind of show you. And you notice that they're all really relaxed because they've gone through many years ago, 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago. We all started with, oh, here's this new thing we want to do. This is acupuncture, this is homeopathy or whatever. And then we jumped on it. We studied our trade. We committed to it. And then after manipulating it and learning it and watching and practicing it, then we all came to the same conclusion that you can, even without all of that, you can still find health through very simple means. And it's always about the same thing. It's no different if it's a human or if it's an animal. It's always about going back to the fundamentals of really good food. Don't put many toxins into your body. Lots of good exercise, lots of good socialization, healthy socialization, and a certain kind of freedom to be who you are innately. Uh, a cat is very different from a dog, and their needs are very different. Now, some of you have cats that are very much like dogs, but they're still very different. I need different things than my partner needs. I need different things than my dog needs. But these are all the kinds of things that for our own spiritual growth and our own development of our brains, our development just as beings, and the happiness quotient. And believe it or not, it's very simple. It's just that simple. I want you to walk away with some sort of sense of that. I don't want you to think this is worry less. I don't want you to think that I am being flippant, because I'm not. I'm just trying to distill it down to its simplest components. And that's what all of these practitioners were able to do after decades of experience. So, what I'd like to do is also my desire and hope is that you will walk away from here with a growing confidence, a sense that you have learned something. And if you need to go back and listen to the lectures again, fantastic. But if you, with this kind of confidence, and it develops slowly over time, you're going to need more. If this is the first time you've ever heard some of these things, don't worry. This is a path that, again, many of us have been on. So come on board. This is not one quick fix, one stop solution. It will take some time to get confident about this, but hopefully we've given you some tools to do that. So make sure you stay connected. If you've developed relationships with anybody on Facebook here, then fantastic. If not, there's probably other options as well. And what I'd like to do, if possible, is open it up to questions. If you can open questions that are kind of related to the summit or today's talks, that would be the most useful. If they're personal questions about your animals, and I can address them in a very quick way, that is a holistic way, I will. But I won't address specific things like, what levels of vitamin A or vitamin D should we give? Because I don't think that's appropriate for this. And we want it to be as broad and helpful for everyone. So, how does that sound with everyone? Um, and one of the things, while you all are coming up with some questions, I'm very delighted to have had a number of veterinarians and veterinary technicians on here that have said this has really been so helpful for them. That makes my heart sing. So, I'm not trying to convince anybody or yank them from the profession that they spent so much time, but it's really nice to be able to open people's hearts up to something. And one last thing I want to mention about holism. Um, the definition that I use for holism, because I see this come up and I can't remember if I discussed it yesterday. Um, what I use for holism is based on the word from the root word for whole, to make whole, which is where healing comes from. The word heal, to heal, also comes from the same word, to make whole, because when you are in disease process, you're fractured. So to make whole is to put you back in completion, in wholeness. And the other term I like to use is from holy or sacred. So I never want you, how could I say this? There is not any place where I think that holistic medicine must be pigeonholed into allopathic medicine. So when I see people that are primarily allopathic practitioners and they're saying they're doing holistic medicine, that bothers me. Just as it would bother somebody who says that they're a veterinary dentist and somebody is co-opting that title and the reason is because um, and I've had many people tell me, even holistic practitioners, I'm a holistic practitioner, and because I incorporate allopathy and I incorporate whatever Chinese medicine or whatever in there, that's not exactly how I think of holistic medicine. That is integrative medicine. You're doing a combination of things, and that's totally fine. I'm not saying that isn't a problem. That's absolutely fine, but it is different. And the reason I bring this up is because people go to their veterinarians looking for a certain kind of thing that I'm talking about here, and then they walk out with something very, very different. So a lot of holistic practitioners are going to tell you that they still do things in a very conventional way. I'm not going to use the word traditional because I think of traditional as ancient medicines, like traditional Chinese medicine. But so you see, there's the language, the syntax is confusing. So just be careful that if you're finding a holistic practitioner, you ask them, what do you do? What are your policies on vaccinations? That's always what I tell people to ask first. Because if they're very much in favor of using lots of vaccinations, which more and more veterinarians are getting away from, then you're probably not in the right place. But if they're willing to talk with you about titers, and they're willing to talk with you about puppy vaccines or kitty vaccines, then you've got somebody on the right track, and you're probably going to have a nice rapport with that person. Okay. So yeah, let me answer a question if I can about glyphosate. Brenda says, since glyphosates are ubiquitous, are there homeopathic remedies to clear it in dogs on a regular basis? Yes, I think so. And I can't tell you that I have homeopathic glyphosate. I can't tell you that I've actually gone out and specifically done that, but it is something to explore. There are some tests you can get for about at $99. There's a couple of different labs right now, and you can research that glyphosate test for dogs. And it is a urine test. I'll have them on my website soon. We don't have them right now. And that is the possibility could be to clear the glyphosate that way. Using fermented foods is really good. And of course, really keeping the food organic is also a really good way to clear glyphosate too. But it's a long-term process because it does get into the tissues. And that was something you probably heard us talk about on that lecture with Dr. Seneff. Okay, next question. Can you use homeopathy for the animals that were spayed or neutered, or can you use something that supports female health? Well, you can always use homeopathy for any spayed or neutered animal. And the best thing, of course, is immediately. So you could use remedies to help them heal from that surgery, especially the females, because you're removing internal organs. But you know what that does basically is put the animal into instant menopause or instant menopause. And so there's a shock to the system. Now, obviously, if it's done before they go into puberty, in a way that's less of a shock because you aren't, you don't have those hormones like take a deep dive. But supporting with glandular therapy, absolutely. You just need to make sure that the glandulars that you are getting are very, very clean. And if they aren't completely 100% organic, which doesn't necessarily, they're often hard to find glandular formulas for ovaries and testes. And if they are from whatever source, that they are tested for heavy metals, for other contaminants. That's mostly what I am concerned about because it's hard to find completely 100% organic. But yeah, that's a great question. That's a really great question. Okay, what else? Let's see. I'm looking at this really quickly. Poppy Phillips, you're asking about, I think, glyphosate. I think you're probably talking about that. No, that should be something you could get fairly easy from one of the homeopathic pharmacies. I can't tell you where I got mine, but you're talking about nosodes, homeopathic nosodes for parvo distemper. Yes, those are prescription. You have to get those through a veterinarian. And let me tell you the way that I do mine. I always have a consult with my clients first because I want to know that your animal is the right animal for the nosodes. And it's really too bad that most veterinarians don't sit down with you and talk about the vaccinations, and really what we call that is informed consent, that they don't give you kind of a list of here's the potential side effects of your vaccination, here's what could happen, and are you okay with that? And that never happens anymore, and it really should happen, and we wouldn't be in the trouble we're in. But also, there, what happens in that process is it's just a very flippant attitude, and we just give vaccines to everybody. I know I did this early in my practice. I did this for the first few years that I was a young veterinarian, and it really hasn't changed much since then. So the homeopathic nosodes, it's really best to work with someone like Dr. Todd or myself or whoever is using nosodes. Not many of us are using nosodes, but some homeopathic veterinarians will be more than happy to give you those nosodes. I can go, one of the things I'm going to do in this special course that we're doing for 20 people, I am going to spend an entire session on vaccines. And we'll go more into nosodes a little bit, but I think Dr. Cooney and I did cover quite a bit because vaccines are such a big topic. I can't get around it. I'm sorry, I can't get around them. And as soon as we really understand and take that time to really consider what these things are, I'm going to feel a lot better, actually. I think we spend more time figuring out, what new telephone to buy than we do about these biological substances we put in our bodies or in our animals' bodies. And that's really a shame. And that's because of the attitude that we've had about them, that, whatever's in this little tiny little vial that looks like water, that's going to protect against everything, which is really a delusion. And it's a shame because it's really fraud too. And it's unfortunate. It's really unfortunate. So anyway, okay. What other questions do we have? Santa, what do you say to vets who roll their eyes at Eastern integrative medicine and think that pet parents are playing with fire by not opting for their version of prevention, monthly heartworm, flea and tick, and pharma? Yeah, this is one of those things where, again, finding the right vet to work for you. Remember, you're paying them money. You interview them and you find who's comfortable with you discussing this. And then get yourself educated. Don't be a goofhead and then just say things, oh, I just heard something on Facebook. Don't do that. Get some education, do some research. Find out what's in those vaccines. I have an article. I'm not sure that it's on my blog. I have an article, but I think it is there. I'm pretty sure it's there. What's in a vaccine? I've done a lot of lectures on this. I've done conferences. Please look at that article. And it doesn't even list everything, but it gives you enough information that you can go in and say, I don't really want my dog injected with formaldehyde. That's a carcinogen. And I have a document, and I'm going to go over this again for the people that I'm going to work with. And at some point, I'll do another class just on vaccines. I'll do a whole workshop just on vaccines. We won't talk about anything else. We'll just talk about vaccines. I've done this before because it's such a big topic, but these are the kinds of things that you need to ask the questions of your vet. You need to ask them, do you know what's in a vaccine? Do you know what's in? So when somebody is, I'm sorry, there's a little off your question. When they're a little bit, they brush you off, just never mind. I hate to say this, but they are closed-minded people. We're more and more of you are asking for these modalities, so do not be don't think that you're asking for the world. You're asking for something that you think might help your animal, and you should just keep asking for it. So just walk out that door, give them blessings, and then, don't go back. Or you just use them for the kinds of things they absolutely can do. Don't expect them to be something they're not. Okay? All right. What else we got here? Is there any herb or homeopathic remedies that can handle erythema so I can get my cat off allopathic medication? Um, yeah, there's lots. That's a difficult question to answer quickly because we're talking about chronic disease. So you have to start at the basis. You have to start looking at, okay, what's the diet? What can we do in terms of the diet that would support basically an anti-inflammatory diet? Is there, what other kind of insiders could be in the house? What can we clean up there? What about vaccines? Was the cat recently vaccinated, or was it a while ago that, now we've got chronic issues been going on? So you have to be the detective. You have to tease it all apart. And it's not always easy, but you do have to tease that apart. And then from there, you decide what kind of support. For things like skin conditions, I do think it's nice to use some herbal preparations, like nettles is always such a good one. If you can get these into your cat, that's the problem with cats. And um, those are nice anti-inflammatory. Nettles is so good for itchies and stuff like that. But homeopathy is the easier way to do for cats, but there's not I can't answer like one quick thing. Unfortunately, I'm sorry. I wish I could. There are homeopathic remedies called histaminum, and sometimes that will help in a very palliative way. So you can try something like that, just in a very palliative way. Might give you a little bit of relief instead of, say, Benadryl or something. Okay. All right. Yeah. It's interesting you bring that up, Joyce. Is the Budwig diet safe for dogs? Ludwina Budwig was a research scientist that did quite a bit of research many years ago with a gentleman I studied with, Ray Peat. And no, I'm sorry. She did work with, that's not right. I can't think of his name. Anyway, she had a very interesting work and created this thing called the Budwig creme. It was really a good thing. I used to make it all the time. It's like a smoothie. It was before the days of the smoothie. It's like early smoothie. And she used a lot of flax in the formula. And I still have a lot of questions about it. When I look at whatever I'm evaluating, I tend to try not to jump just into something. I kind of try to look at, okay, would this be something a dog can tolerate? A dog can certainly tolerate a lot since they're omnivorous. But I do worry a little bit about flax. Some people really like it for animals, especially for issues like Cushing's. But I don't think it's a natural oil for dogs. I don't think it is metabolized as easily. And so it's not my favorite oil for dogs in general. Okay. Is there a study on neuter dogs fed raw, fresh food diet having lower cases of problems like cancers, joint issues? Chevy, I don't know. We need one. Actually, I can't think of her name. I wish I could think of her. She's in Europe. Gosh, maybe some of you guys know. I can't think of her name right now. And she's a research scientist. I think Karen Becker went and did some studying with her. So that would be the place I would go if I wish maybe somebody can put that into the chat if they remember. But it's going to get bigger and bigger. it is. It's gonna get more, mainstream so that ultimately at some point but, it's just so weird to me to think, "Why do we have to do that?" I mean, that's always we were talking about the eternal question, "Why, why, why?" Well, why does it matter? All you have to do is look at, what do the dogs thrive on? And how are they the most robust? Well, I do have friends that feed their dogs vegan diets, and they seem to do pretty well. Because dogs are omnivorous, they're able to do this kind of back and forth and use various different resources, food sources. You know, um, for me, I just look at, okay, what do we need for a healthy animal? What do we need for a healthy carnivore? What is their what is their basic foundation? And that whole a lot of those things like cruciate and stuff, we actually can relate to um, early spay neutering. If you remember the studies that Dr. Tara Timpson and I spoke about, so having a base of a diet that's really, really good, really healthy, and exactly what these animals thrive on, I think that's always going to help you lay that foundation for good health. It's going to be an anti-cancer diet. It's going to be an um, anti-cruciate diet. It's going to be an inflammatory immune dysfunction, etc. Um, and as I say that, I also have to check myself because I know that I don't know everything about what animals should eat, about what dogs should eat. I know something about it after all these years, but I also know there's a wide world out there. And if there is something or another that says to you, you know your dog better, that my dog doesn't do good with that, then you have to answer those questions for yourself. I also know that I do not think animals need to eat meat twice a day or 3 times a day, our dogs in particular, because in the wild, they don't really eat that often. They fast in between as they're looking for food sources. They don't intentionally fast, they just fast looking for food sources. And so, and feeding a raw food diet is not always the best thing. And some animals never gain weight on just a meat-based diet, and they're too thin to begin with. I like animals have a little bit of padding on them, a little bit of resource in case something happens. So if you're looking for diets, just try to be open to what's right for your animal. And that's what the most important thing. I hope I answered that. Sorry. Okay. What else? What diagnostics would you use to determine if there's a physical reason for fear, anxiety, and aggression? That's a really good question. That's a really good question. Oh, by the way, I just see that's exact. I just want to just, um, I, okay. Um, that's a really good question, Joanna. I'm trying to think. I don't think I, I don't think I can think of truly a diagnostic. Like you're talking about a lab test. You're talking about something. No, I can't think of anything that I would use. I think it's just pretty obvious. If you have an animal that is attached at the waist and you can't even walk out the door to the garage without the dog going into major conniption fits, this is that's not a good place for that animal to be. That's really stressful on the immune system, stressful on the adrenals, blah blah blah. But I don't know of any diagnostic tests for that. I think this needs to be something that you're just evaluating. You're seeing that this is not normal. And the aggression issue, really, the problem with it, I do see such a tremendous amount of, I think it's an epidemic of aggression. And I know that many of the trainers and maybe Dr. Dunbar if he were here, he could comment on it. I'm not sure about his philosophy, but I see a lot of animals that are then um, trained so heavily that they're suppressed, and that they're kind of a time bomb waiting there to happen, that they really can't, they really, what I call it brain on fire. I think I mentioned that in one of the Q&As, that they have an inflammatory condition, especially after rabies vaccine, that can, because some of these heavy metals, aluminum and mercury, can actually go through the blood-brain barrier. And those two are in most vaccinations. Even the mercury-free vaccines, so-called mercury-free vaccines, do have some mercury in them. They make them with mercury. They won't add mercury as a preservative later, but they make them with mercury. So there's still issue of those being in there. And because they're such strong neurotoxins, they can cause an inflammatory condition in the brain. And I think this is why we're seeing so much aggression in our dogs. Now, there's other things too. I mean, all the other toxicants that they're dealing with, this is a continuum of that. But there are nice things you can do to support the health of the brain, to support the health of the gut, because the gut is where most of the serotonin is made, and the serotonin goes up to the brain and creates calmness in the brain, blah, blah, blah. So overtraining, a heavy hand, a suppressive kind of approach to training, is the absolute wrong direction to go. Did I answer that question? You can tell I'm getting to the end of the summit here too. I just saw something here where somebody made a comment. Hang on one second, about yes, Anna Hylam Borkman. Anna Hylam Borkman. Poppy Phillips found it. And that's exactly, a lot of her work, I think, is related to raw food diets and the overall health and vitality. What there hasn't been done, which I wish I could have, is the difference between animals that have never been vaccinated and animals that have been vaccinated. I would love to see that study. I certainly have enough of them in my clinic, but I've never done that research. To me, that would be, some recent studies were done that were pretty amazing studies done by Dr. Paul. I'm having a hard time remembering names today. I think, again, it's the end of the summit. And he's a pediatrician in Washington State. And he did some retrospective studies out of his clinic clients, excuse me, kids that were vaccinated versus kids that were not vaccinated. And they looked at how many hospital visits, how many inpatient clinic visits there. They looked at the difference. It was amazing, the difference. And all you have to do is talk to people who have not vaccinated their children, and they'll tell you how healthy they are. Oh my gosh, it's amazing. All you have to do is talk to my clients who've not vaccinated their animals, and they'll tell you how amazing they are. Okay, sorry, Isaac, what was that last question? Is it necessary to get Piver tighter? Okay. This is a good question, Angelo. I'm really glad you asked that question. If you need to, okay. But if your animal has had some early vaccinations in their life, I don't find it's worth the money. Number one, we really don't see parvo and distemper in adult animals. Usually that first 6 months is when it's the most dangerous, because that's when their immune systems aren't really developed. Remember, I mentioned somewhere or another, I've been talking a lot this weekend, that that what happens at the time of puberty is those hormones supercharge the immune system. Once the immune system sort of comes online, then there is rarely going to be an animal that's going to succumb to parvo or distemper. Where we see disease is always the same. It's about 4 different things. When there's some huge amount of stress, so say an animal is living on the streets, when there's malnutrition or starvation, when there's major stress in a household, say maybe living with too many animals or in a hoarding situation, or an exposure to toxicants. And almost always all disease comes in those kind of situations. It doesn't matter if it's rabies. It does not matter if it's distemper. It does not matter. Should I go on? You get the point. You rarely see these kinds of acute infectious diseases in animals that are healthy, that are in good living situations. And if you do, please hear me. If you do, it's usually a transient but not life-threatening situation. Now, I know some veterinarians will immediately, their back of their hair will stand up, but think about it. When did you last see an animal that was healthy that had parvo, that wasn't vaccinated? See, that's the key. I see plenty of animals that have been vaccinated that then come down with parvo. In fact, I created that in my situation in my early years as a vet. And that was one of the things that I did this in 2 litters of puppies. And I vaccinated these completely healthy puppies, never had seen parvo. This was back in the 80s. And almost all of those puppies died. It devastated me, it devastated the breeders, and I immediately called up the vaccine companies, and they said the animals were incubating parvo at that time, and these people had never seen parvo in their homes, in their kennels, in their population. What I know now is those vaccines caused that and killed those puppies. So do I think titers are important? If you had to do a titer because someone is pressuring you, because you can't get into a socialization class or et cetera, then do your titers. I like to do titers. I've done titers for my dog. You all know I have an aging dog here. I used to do them every year just for my own edification. I don't think she was like probably 13 or 14 before those distemper parvo titers came down. So, these titers on antibody well, actually all of those, but especially distemper and parvo, they can run very high for very long. And when you're reading a titer, it does not matter how high it is. It does not matter. All you need to see is that there is a reaction in there, that there is some sort of a titer there. And that's enough to tell you that the immune system is turned on currently. But it does not tell you that there's what we call an anamnestic response, a memory response. The memory response is what's there for those of us that had chickenpox as kids or measles or mumps. And if you came in contact with, and you had them when you were a kid, and you came in contact with, a second grade classroom, and there's chickenpox and measles and mumps going around, your anamnestic response would kick in gear. And because it's not a big deal, because your immune system is much more functional than it was when you were a second grader, but it kicks in gear and produces antibodies. So there's been so much confusion around antibodies with this whole COVID scenario, which is really irritating to me, because it makes it very scary for people to not understand about how your body can protect. So the titers that you do are only a tiny snapshot of one wing of the immune system. Okay, so here's another important thing. Don't kill the messenger, but antibody titers do not necessarily mean immunity. You can have an antibody titer and not have protection or immunity. And this is another dirty little secret that people don't tell you. But I can tell you that for the most part, if you have antibody titers, for the most part, the animal is protected. But what I think really protects your animal is their age and their exposure to be out there in the world, meeting other dogs. These things are everywhere. Parvo's everywhere. Distemper, not so much, only in certain communities. But we need that kind of training. We need that kind of exposure. And if you have that even on a regular basis, your body's going to deal with it. It's going to handle it. And usually, unless a very immune compromised animal, is going to be perfectly fine. So I would only do antibody titers if you're like me and you're a nerd and you want to see what's happening, or if your kennel requires it, or if there's some other academic reason. But otherwise, I wouldn't do them, not in an adult animal. You don't need to worry about that. You should worry about other things. Okay, like how much gas is going to cost. Do you recommend an calendula tea rinse or something else to help dogs itching when my clients don't want to use Apoquel? Oh, yeah, Connie, that's a great question. I love calendula. I love calendula. Calendula, if I was on a deserted island, I would want two things. I would want arnica and calendula. And calendula is not easy to find. We have to get it special ordered from Animal Essentials. I used to be able to get it from the homeopathic pharmacies. I love calendula. Yes, making a nice tea and using that on your dog, that's a really, really good way to kind of calm the skin. You can also use black tea or green tea because they're kind of astringent and they can help for a short time for an itchy dog or a cat. And but calendula I use for so many other things, for wound healing, for burns, for cuts, for scrapes, for punctures, etc. It's brilliant. I mean, brilliant. I use it internally as a homeopathic as well. And I'm either a 30 or a 200C. It's make sure you have it on hand. I don't even know what to tell you. Just you can use it in the ears. You can use a drop or two, or put it on the end of a tissue. You can use it pretty much everywhere. So get it. It's wonderful. And then, it's so good at healing wounds that, say, for example, your dog or cat has an abscess here and it ruptures. It's so good at healing that you have to wait till that abscess completely opens and all of the pus has come out, because if you put calendula on there, it'll actually close that wound a little too fast, and then it might fill up again. But I have seen very dramatic, horrible, horrible open wounds where they couldn't put the skin together and left open wounds this big on dogs on their side. I have seen them come together. Someday I'll put that together. I have a case of mine, which the veterinarians were so surprised was able to close very quickly. I've seen this happen in horses as well. You can use it on many of those horse wounds that they're often getting, wire cuts, etc. It's such a brilliant gift that we have from the natural world. All right, there. I was effusive enough. Hi, John. Is there an animal-specific homeopathic kit or a general human animal kit? Great question. Not really. I have homeopathic kits in my store, and I have new ones coming that I'm actually going to custom. We just have to, when the summit is over, I have to finish my order. They're no different. No different. The only thing I've done with my kits is that I make sure that I have a couple of remedies that I would use specifically for, say, for example, post-rabies vaccine or post-distemper vaccine. And then I always make sure that there's remedies for the abdominal surgery after a spay or any other kind of abdominal surgery. And sometimes those aren't always in the human kits. It seems kind of crazy, but sometimes they're not in the human kits. But otherwise, John, they're exactly the same. It's the same hypericum, it's the same ledum, it's the same bellis, it's the same belladonna. All of those are exactly the same. So if you've got a homeopathic kit, great. I wish every single person here, it would be my wish if I had a magic wand that every single person here had their own homeopathic kit, whatever kind, 30C, 50 remedies, 100, whatever, to have on hand, and to then take a class, which I'll be doing here in the summer, although I have a couple little ones on there now, to learn basic homeopathy you will be a rock star in your own family. You will feel so empowered. It will be a life-changing situation. And some of you who know this can put those comments in the chat. You do not have to. This is one of my goals, is to do as much DIY information for you so that you are empowered, that you are then able to handle some of the most basic things and some of the even really critical things, so that you're saving you're saving money, you're saving trips to your vet, but again, you're saving stress on your animal, and you're planning a future where you have a lot of options and you're not vulnerable. This COVID situation, again, left so many people so vulnerable. And it was heartbreaking to watch this, people turning their animals over to strangers, and then they're off, and then situations happen, and oh, terrible. Anyway, so definitely stay tuned for that. That's my main goal, is to help as many people get a homeopathic kit and a basic education in homeopathy. You know, knowledge is power, but wisdom will take you the whole way. That's the beauty of so many of these veterinarians and people I had on this summit. They are full of wisdom at this point in time after years of hard knocks. And that's what I wanted you to glean from this, that kind of rooted wisdom. And after this, you will have it yourself. I know that. All right. Any other questions here? Lynn, raw or organic, glyphosate free, most important. Obviously, both grass fed ideal, but what to prioritize the most? You know, if you're going to get grass fed, more than likely that's going to be, maybe they're not getting the label organic, but that's probably going to be in your community, going to be a very good source of food. So I would try to do that. That's kind of a step up above. If it's, yeah, that's what I would do. That's a step up above. Okay. Okay, can you tell us the best rabies vaccine that's low mercury? I think there are a couple, but the one that I'm most familiar with is from Mierel, Mierel, and they're they're low. But the other thing is, you know, you can, if you have a small dog, you can ask your veterinarian to please give a low dose. And you can ask them, or even if you don't have a small dog, if you have a huge Great Dane, ask them to give you a small dose and then do antibody titers. And you can do, there's a variety of ways to go about it. Kansas State University has the testing. You can send your blood there. You can get your animal, the blood drawn, and send the serum there and get that tested. That's the cheapest way to do it. I want to say maybe it's $45 now. Maybe I'm off. Your regular veterinarian is going to charge quite a bit more, but at least you can get a general idea. And if that small dose was adequate, most of the time it is. I've seen very, very small doses give you adequate titers. And the measurement on titers on rabies, they have a certain level, 0.05, and that's just for, they came up with those levels so that people could travel to countries that don't have any rabies. And it's not really, I mean, it's a kind of a, somehow the figure was decided. I think it's a little bit arbitrary, but it tells you again that the immune system's turned on. So, using, please, the other thing, when I say these things, with all sincerity, it's really not a good idea to think that you can get a mercury-free vaccine of any kind, or even say just a parvo or just a distemper, and be okay. Or get a vaccine and then use homeopathic remedy afterwards, and then it'll be okay. Don't fall into that pattern because it may trigger such a strong reaction in your dog who's teetering maybe with some autoimmune disease or teetering with that brain on fire or teetering with inflammatory bowel. And then you just added, the match to the dynamite. So, and clearing the vaccines is not always easy. These things are little nuclear bombs, and this is my biggest worry. Okay, I am not complacent or flippant about them. Okay, that's the next question. Is homeopathic different to Chinese medicine? Yes. And how do you choose what's right for your dog? Where to start? Derna, that's a great question. So homeopathic medicine, if you haven't listened to my conversation with Dr. Pitcairn, that would really be a good idea. And you still have time. So you could do that and then do a little research. The National Center for Homeopathy, I think I have a blog on FAQs about homeopathy. There's a lot of great information in there. So homeopathy is an energetic medicine. Chinese medicine is based on, traditional Chinese medicine is based on 3,000 or 5,000 years of medicine from the ancient Chinese. It's a medicine that's based around the use of acupuncture needles, the use of diet, and the use of herbs, and other lifestyle changes. Homeopathy is an energy system that's about 200 years old. It was synthesized about 200 years ago, but the principles are that like cures like. And whatever the medicine that could have, or the agent that could have caused harm, can then be made into a potentized, diluted, energetic solution that then can cure. So a perfect example is something like arsenic. So arsenic, everybody knows, is a poison. It can cause serious vomiting, diarrhea, plus a whole, and it can kill you. But in its energetic form, in its homeopathic form, can cure diarrhea, can cure vomiting. So doesn't that sound like a lovely thing to have? What all of us have had food poisoning, or our dogs or cats have had vomiting or diarrhea. So that's the beauty. That's how this, so if it could cause diarrhea, vomiting, then it can cure diarrhea and vomiting. And what I love about it, and I've told you a bunch of things I love about homeopathy, is that it's so in line with nature. It's so in line with your nature. It's so in line with your ability to heal, your animal's ability to heal. It is helping, because sometimes when you go into this vomiting, diarrhea, it's like you're stuck on a broken record. I hope all of you are old enough to know what a broken record is. Like boom, boom, keep going. Vomiting, diarrhea, vomiting, diarrhea. And then you give a homeopathic remedy and it kind of knocks it off that broken record. And you find it will then help you restore health naturally, smooth, very clean. What we've done in this country is we have conditioned people to believe that you can't heal on your own, that you have to go to a pharma doctor, and the pharma doctor has to give you something to suppress those symptoms. That's an anti-nature, right? And what homeopathy and holistic medicines do is they work with nature. Haven't we been talking about that the entire time? Yesterday, we spent an hour and a half on that, working with nature, not against it. So with homeopathy, it is always about helping the body to do what it knows how to do. And sometimes it gets stuck, because we all get stuck. And if you help it along and knock it off that broken record, then the restoration of overall health is going to improve. The behavior is going to improve. The attitude, the happiness factor is going to improve. The diarrhea, the vomiting are going to come along. Everything is going to improve. Now, in chronic disease, it's more complicated. because you have to tease away. We call it like the onion layers. We have to remove all of the obstructions to the curing process. And then we get down to the essence of where, way at the very bottom, how is this being? How can we support this being so that its body can heal? And as long as you're alive, you have a vital force. And that vital force is your healing mechanism. So take away this. Your body has the ability to heal. Your dog's body has the ability to heal. Trust it. Work with it. Support it. Do not think that it can be pushed aside easily, because it can't. It's there, always trying to keep the body going. So anyway, that's my shtick on that. Okay. What else, Isaac? Neely, hi. How do we sign up for the smaller class with you? Sign up for my newsletter on my website, on my homepage at the very bottom. Sign up there and you'll be abreast of all of those classes that'll be coming. Yes, Donna, you're right. Our bodies have the ability to heal. Please trust it. I can't tell you, fundamentally, that is such a big deal. Talking to people all day long, they are so frightened that they go to extremes. We've all done this. You'll go to extremes and you'll agree to techniques, procedures, or drugs that are so caustic, abrasive, harmful, toxic, and severe, because we don't trust the body can heal, because we've been conditioned. I promise you, when your cat gets sick or your dog gets sick, what do? They don't know you have a medicine cabinet there. They don't know you have antibiotics or that you have homeopathy. They just go and they hunker down. And they hunker down and they just kind of wait for the healing to happen. And hopefully it does. Animals in the wild do that too. Dr. Schoen was talking about the deer that come to his house and all the wildlife that's around, because they have created this healing oasis. And when you create that place, the animals will be attracted to that, and your animal will be attracted to that to allow them to heal. They know how to heal. This thing we are housed in is such a remarkable evolutionary system. It is so profoundly intelligent. Yeah, it sometimes gets stuck because nothing is perfect. But in this mechanism, there is the ability to change and move mountains. So you have to just, and I'm not saying blind trust, I'm saying you can't just, say, okay, thou shalt heal. That would be nice. And maybe some people can do that, but you also have to feed those nutrients. You have to shift that energy. You have to give the healing space. And animals in the wild, I think Alan was talking about in my interview with him, he had a deer that came that was wounded, that had broken a leg, and it came there for weeks and it just healed on his property. And that is what animals do. That's a perfect example of, having a veterinarian say, I'm just going to watch this healing. I can't do anything about it, and the animal healed on its own. And many times that can't happen on its own, but many times it can. And because those wild animals, we haven't interfered with them as much. Now, knowing that there's a lot of toxins in our environment, but we haven't assaulted them every year. And their bodies still have a competent immune system, competent ability to heal. And that is the difference. When we use homeopathics on wild animals, their healing is like that. It is it's amazing. I feel like a brilliant homeopath, but I'm not. I'm just the same homeopath. It's just that their ability to heal is just much more robust because they haven't been encumbered by all these things. So I'm not trying to, again, worry less. I'm trying to give you all ideas so that you understand the potential for the body to heal and for your animals to heal. Okay, what else? I think maybe just a couple more questions here. Isaac, let's see what we can do. All right. Hmm. I see something from Dolores. I'm going to mention this. Yes, Dolores, we've worked together many years. Dolores is one of these amazing pet parents that has put so much effort into her animals, and big dogs. She has a beautiful big golden retriever right now. She's a lovely dog, and Autumn has gone through quite a bit. And with the support of her other veterinary team, um, she has and homeopathy and supplements. This dog is a 15-year-old wonder. So she's still able to heal. She's just because she's 15, we're not writing her off. We're not saying go off, this is as best as she can do. And so Dolores is a great example of testament of what can be done. Okay. Lynn, go to the very bottom of my homepage, drdblanco.com, and there's a newsletter sign up there. Love to have you on board. Well, is there any other questions you can find, Isaac, that I can answer for you all? Donna, I like what you said. Fear is false evidence appearing real. Oh, that's great. That's great. Here's a little question. How much and how long do homeopathic stress aconite work in a German Shepherd dog? How you use aconite is at an immediate shock. Aconite is really wonderful if you've had a huge trauma. I broke my wrist a couple of years ago and I went into shock, and I said, as soon as I get up off the ground, I'm going to go get some aconite. And I did. And then later I used it again. And you can use aconite if there's been a trauma to tissues, even though you might have already used arnica. You can go back and use aconite because the tissues were shocked, not just your brain, not just your emotional state. So you can use aconite for any, I think I have a blog about aconite too. Maybe that's where you got it from, Shari. You can use aconite with any kind of a trauma. You can use it. When I first got this cold, it didn't stop it, but I had been in severe cold wind, 60-mile-an-hour winds, and lots of snow, and very stressed and kind of overworked. And these people at Pet Summits, they just work me too hard. And I took aconite that night, and it really helped significantly. It probably would have been worse earlier then. And you can take it at the start of a illness. You can take it if there's a fever. There's many uses of aconite, often for early, anything that comes on suddenly, such as a cold or a flu or anything, just very sudden onset. Okay. Now, that doesn't mean like puncture wounds and things like that. You have other remedies for that. Okay. I think, how should you, yeah, administering remedies to animals is pretty simple. And in my course, we go through all of that, but it's really very simple. You just take the pellets. Some people will pull the pellets and they can crush them, put them in like a folded index card or something, and then crush them so that you get a little powder. Then you can kind of funnel it right in their mouth. I think that for me is kind of cumbersome. So I usually take 1 or 2 pellets, no more than that. And I'll take in a glass of water, just a regular glass of water. And I'll put the pellets in there, and I'll put them aside for a little while I'm doing something else, and they'll start to dissolve. And then I stir the water really, really vigorously. And then I'll take a dosing syringe, and I'll just pull up some water in there. And then I'll just pull up the lip, and I'll just, dose that way. You can dose just a few drops. It doesn't have to be the whole thing, just a few drops. And you may need to repeat the remedy depending on what the situation is. If it's a really acute, like scary thing, you may need to repeat it every 15 minutes for an hour or so. If it's a chronic condition, then you need to work with your homeopath about how often you can give that remedy. The other way, I mean, if you had to, you can put it in their food if you really had to. It can work that way. I don't recommend it because I like, the joke about the Valley girl who took 2 birth control pills to be for sure, for sure. Yeah, I want to be for sure that my client's animals got the remedy so that I can evaluate the response. So I prefer it not to be on food unless that's the only way. Putting in a little bit of milk, neutral milk, usually half and half or regular whole milk, is considered neutral. And you can put the pellets in there, let them dissolve, and let your animal lick that up. They can drink the whole thing, it's fine. And then it's a treat. Or you can put it in their water and then you can just, evaluate and watch them drink it 2 or 3 times. Okay, what else do we want to talk about? I think that's about it. Um, um, I think that's about it right now. We have so many comments in here. I hate to bring this to a close, and I know it's kind of a sad thing here, but if I've done anything to help here, I'm eternally grateful that you all came and that you showed response, that your vital forces were passionate and intact and functioning and completely 100% available for your dogs, your cats, your horses, all of your family members. I am thrilled. I am thrilled and deeply, deeply grateful to have been a facilitator in this process for you. And I hope we stay connected. I hope that you remember that you can still upgrade and purchase this so you can view it later or gift it to someone else. Pass around the links, anything you want to do. I hope we all stay connected somehow or another. We need each other now. Our animals need us so. Our planet needs us so. And I could go on and on gushing, and all of you are my role models. All of you are my reason for being. So keep up the good work and stay connected. Thank you so much. Blessings to you all. Namaste.